We may or may not be alone in the universe, but we're certainly not alone in cyberspace. But who are these other citizens of the net? And will they eventually overtake the human race? Hello and welcome again to the Theories of Everything program on Channel 31 Community Television. I'm David Tower. In our previous three programs of this series, Theories of Cyberfutures, we examined the increasing power of the internet. We examined the enormous increase in computing power through connection with new types of computers as well as existing PCs and hundreds of thousands of them as well. We examined also the increasing bandwidth so that communication is possible from between any individuals anywhere on the planet. Any time, any place, the internet will always be on. It will always be available. We also examined in those programs the connection between humans and computers and the way that gradually there's a closer and closer linkage between the two, so that humans will be able to speak, and already do, to some extent, speak naturally to computers and vice versa. And computers are gradually learning to understand body language, facial expressions, etc. But really the way to understand the evolving internet and its impact on our future civilization is to look at it as the connection between all of human intelligence augmented by computer intelligence. It's really connecting every person in the world, eventually. In fact, in a couple of years there'll be about a billion individuals connected to the internet. But it's that mind power that's the critical aspect. It's the ability to focus all of our intelligence, augmented by incredible computer power, on the major problems that are already confronting us in terms of global warming, all the other major ecological problems, etc. Problems relating to space travel, problems relating to interpersonal relationships, democracy. All those issues can be examined with a global intelligence through the medium of the internet. So really what we're looking at here, viewers, is the internet as our new cyber world. The internet will compress space and time, already is. Instant communication with someone on the other side of the world. Space is no problem. Time is no problem. Anywhere, anytime. So this will become our new reality over time. The physical world, while still there and still wonderful, will become one of just a number of realities. We will spend most of our time in the future in cyberworld. The focus of this program, however, will be to examine who cohabits our cyberworld, who will live with us in this new space. And there's really a number of categories. These are the objects, if you like. These are the new intelligences that humans have invented, but which are rapidly evolving in their own right. The first major category is, of course, robots. And the second category are the new forms of intelligent agents that live in a silicon world at the moment. So robots have been around a long time. They were invented, in fact, probably the earliest formal robots were the articulated statues of ancient Egypt about 3,000 years ago, which were manipulated by priests covertly and made to seem lifelike. Back in the 16th century, Leonardo da Vinci also started to design a robot form, and in the 18th century there were several clockwork humanoids invented that could play the mandolin, that could play the harpsichord, and actually look quite lifelike. Things got moving in the 19th century and in the 20th century particularly, when the first robots that could actually walk and talk were designed by Sony Corporation. These robots were quite spectacular. They could walk upstairs, they could speak, and they could also play music. Their cameras could interpret musical notation and, in accordance, play different instruments as well. But these were still early forms. It's amazing that in fact these forms of robots, these more natural human-like robots, didn't really emerge until the 1970s. Of course, before then there were some industrial robots in factories doing welding and cutting and so forth, but these were virtually extensions of mechanical industrial processes working in predetermined steps. Our humanoid robots developed further in the 90s, and there was really a big shift because in the 80s robots or robotic devices, for example driverless trucks which were developed, which NASA attempted to develop, worked on a top-down approach. They worked by trying to envisage in advance exactly what processes would be required to avoid obstacles, for example, or to move various parts. And this was all contained in computer storage and a computer database, and whatever happened with the interaction of the robot and its environment, the robot would then look up its computer database and work out what it had to do. This was a top-down approach, and in fact it didn't work very well at all. One of the leading researchers who reversed this paradigm, the new paradigm which emerged again probably in the 90s, was Rodney Brooks, Professor Rodney Brooks, who was an Australian working in America. And he decided it was time to change the whole approach and work from the bottom up. So he virtually decentralised the decision-making in robots. And one of his first sort of insect-type robots was called Genghis. And Genghis really had 6 legs, was quite small, about the size of that coffee cup, and it was programmed to move forward when possible and to avoid obstacles. And it had 6 legs. So each leg was programmed to move forward, avoid other legs, and keep going. When it hit an obstacle, it would avoid that, and it would remember how to avoid it. Now, from that very simple sort of decentralised programming approach, Genghis developed some very sophisticated behaviour. It moved, gradually got its whole 6 legs working in unison, and it was able to make good time on the ground. And from then on, that approach, that decentralised approach where you get emergent behaviour by combining a number of different decentralised movements, has been one of the main stays of robotic design. And of course that's taken from humans. We don't have to think when we reach across to something, when we pick something up, when we glance somewhere. That's all done by decentralised processes without having to confer with one major sort of cortex brain centre. So the way gradually, the big trend line here with robots is that they've developed a way of working in this decentralised, a more unstructured, dynamic sort of way, without having to pre-learn everything. In fact, they learn on the fly. They learn to learn. They evolve their behaviour from fairly simple beginnings, and they become more sophisticated as they understand the environment in which they're working. So we see some fairly significant movements here, and in the design of robots, and now they're used, of course, in a variety of areas, entertainment and domestic areas particularly. For example, take domestic robots. In 1999, there were roughly 3,000 domestic robots being sold. These domestic robots included everything from cleaning, automatic robots to clean a swimming pool, to vacuuming floors, taking the garbage out, watering plants, perhaps even getting beer out of the fridge. The projections by 2003 are that there'll be roughly 300,000 of these domestic robots around. And they're quite sophisticated. They have sensors, they have infrared sensors, touch sensors, they have sophisticated actuators, they can operate on wheels, and some of them can actually slide or walk across the floor. They work as they go. They can find their way back to their power source by building their cognitive maps as they go, rather than having to be given one at the beginning of the process. This is the same approach, by the way, that's being used by the Australian Army. It's developed monitoring robots to monitor our northern shores. And these robots will not be pre-programmed with a map of the area. They will be placed in the environment. They'll be given mobility. Some of them will be actually drones flying around, others will be on the ground, and they'll be able to keep track of of their environment and build their maps and return and be able to download information as required. The downloading of information, by the way, is actually the key, or the uploading of information, new instructions sometimes, downloading information, surveillance information, perhaps the domestic robots downloaded information about to the owner of the house who's away on holiday that there's been a break-in or whatever at the same time as they're doing their normal jobs, because the uploading and downloading of information requires that the robot be connected to the internet. So we can see that robots won't just be free-moving entities performing their tasks, they will be linked for extra power to the internet. When they require extra information, they'll be able to ask for it. And basically, that's the second major trend. The first trend is that they'll be able to work in unstructured environments with less certain information, because they'll have powerful artificial intelligence programs that will let them infer where there are gaps, where they can't find things, where they can't do things, where they're blocked. They'll be able to refer to other sources on the internet and fill those gaps, or use powerful inductive logic techniques. But the other trend, of course, is that they are a movement towards making them more human-friendly. In other words, they'll look and act and behave more like humans. So there's the ones that you've probably already seen on television, the two famous humanoid robots, are called Cog and Kismet. I'm sure you've probably seen them at different times. Cog is a torso from here up, which has obviously cameras for eyes, microphones for ears, and a large number of degrees of freedom. It can move the head, move the torso, and grasp. Has the ability to grasp things, manipulate things. In fact, a more sophisticated cog is being planned for the space station to do a lot of the maintenance out in space. And it will have to be able to fit its hand through confined spaces, grasp, do up nuts and bolts, all the things that humans do at the moment. It's called Robonaut, by the way. But Kismet is just a face. Kismet has movable eyebrows and lips and ears, and actually has sort of eyelids and can put on quite a good human expression. But the interesting thing about both these robots is that they can also accept human interaction. If I say to Kismet, look over there, it will follow my gaze. It will look over there. It may be able to interpret an object, a book, for example, or glass. If I speak very loudly and angrily at it, it'll work back, it'll walk back, it'll walk away. It will interpret that I'm angry for some reason. Perhaps if I'm sad, it'll come closer. It learns to interpret body language, facial expressions, emotions, and of course language as well, intonation. So these aren't just sort of clever, sort of remotely controlled objects. These are sophisticated entities driven by artificial intelligence and all the techniques humans can sort of muster to make them more natural. And gradually they're interacting closer and closer with ourselves. So robots are our first class of neighbours in cyberspace. And remember, they're evolving all the time. The research programs are going ahead and they're getting cleverer and cleverer, and this linkage with humans is getting closer and closer. There is another linkage, of course, in terms of bionic humans, humans that are fitted with artificial devices to assist them, such as retinas, ear implants, artificial heart, artificial lungs. All sorts of electronics are being fitted to humans, as we spoke about in the previous program. And all these different devices that are linking humans, that are making it possible for humans to survive longer, can also be linked to the internet as well. Artificial pacemakers, for example, so that if anything goes wrong, information can be downloaded again and improve the survival of our bionic humans. So bionic humans and robots are getting closer, as are humans and robots, and they're all there on the net. Now, the other major player on the net we can describe as virtual life or artificial life. And the most common form of that at the moment is intelligent agents, a class of intelligent software called agents. Now, agents are, just as the name describes, agents for us, agents for each individual. Agents do a variety of things. Basically, they're semi-autonomous programs. And they also have mobility, so they can move around the net. They're programmed in Java, the Java language, which is the common language for programming most of the new internet processors at the moment. Now, the agents have different types of architectures, but they differ from ordinary programs. They are not deterministic programs. They are given goals, for example. They are given planning mechanisms. They're given business rules, for example. They're given behaviour techniques. In other words, when they're confronted with a particular problem, they can react to that, but not just in one way. If they can't solve the problem that way, if you like, they're trained, as a child would be, for example, or as a person, to try another method, to look at alternatives. So they have that sort of flexibility in their behaviours and their reactions. They're trained to search for information, retrieve information, but not just information. They're trained to retrieve techniques and methods and problem-solving approaches to things. They're obviously quite sophisticated little programs, and again, they go by a number of names. You can buy them off the shelf. You can buy Firefly or Tete-a-Tete or Personal Logic, for example. There are others even called Odyssey and Voyager. But let's see what they do. Their applications are many and varied now and increasing day by day. First of all, they're used in environments that are complex and that are dynamic. In other words, there's lots of changes going on, there's lots of different things happening, and to analyse those environments, it's usually too complicated to write normal software, analytical software. It's made much easier by handing over the job to perhaps 20 agents who will split the problem or the particular position they're emulating. It'll split that problem into sub-problems, into sub-parts. Or in other cases, it will act as a variety of virtual avatars or operators, each one doing a different thing. Whether it's sub-problems or interacting with the environment in different ways. For example, Macy's used intelligent agents to simulate the best design layout for the shop. They wanted to sort of see what would happen when customers interacted with their new design layout possibilities. So they engineered about 50 different types of human behaviours, programmed them into the agents, 50 different types of virtual shoppers, and let them interact in a simulation. And of course they didn't know what would happen. I mean, the behaviour of these interactions is complex. You can't sort of work it out normally. The only way you could work it out is by having real humans milling around, but that doesn't give you time to try different scenarios and options. So that was a very successful program. It gave them some ideas, and it showed where areas were going to be congested or whether the customers would get annoyed or whatever. So agents can be used in that simulation way, or by, again, splitting up major difficult problems into sub-problems. But when each of the agent has finished their particular task, they have to join again with the other agents and pool their knowledge. Or, for example, in the case of scientific use of agents, to simulate gas turbine physics, for example. That had to be broken down, that problem, into a number of simulations, each using differential equations. One agent working on each part of the problem. When the whole thing was done, when each was finished, they had to join up the results to get the final answer. And so agents can be applied in each of these ways. They can also be applied in finance, for example, to look for fraud. They're very good at looking for patterns in huge amounts of transaction information, say a bank. where there may be hidden patterns of fraud, for example, but just if someone tried to sort of analyse it with a spreadsheet or with a standard database program, there'd be no way that those patterns would emerge. But agents can do it because first of all they do it in parallel, as some of our new computing paradigms work. They split the job up, they work in different areas, and they come together. And they have sophisticated artificial intelligence software as well to power them. They've also been used in trading environments, stock market transactions. Again, checking the potential behaviours, simulating virtual large funds management groups, and also simulating day traders, small players on the stock market, and looking at their behaviour over time. So you can see they're very useful, and they operate in cyberspace. They operate on the internet. They're intelligent, and they actually work in communities, just as humans do on the internet. If one can't find something, they're also used, of course, I failed to mention that they're used for buying and selling and in auctions. They negotiate prices. You can say, go and find me a rare edition of Seascape Painters, for example. Search all over the book databases on the internet. If it finds one, it will find a buyer and negotiate with the agent, the software program, for that seller. So you'll have a buying and a selling agent, just as you would in real life, and they'll negotiate a price. The agents have rules built into them, and they have negotiating tactics. They might even use techniques such as were developed by John Nash in A Beautiful Life, using games theory, utility functions. But anyway, either way, they're fitted with the ability to do this, and they're doing it as we speak. And they're working in communities. Again, as I said, if one agent can't find something, it may contact another search agent from another buyer and say, have you found anything yet? So in answer, viewers, to my earlier rhetorical question as to whether these new players in cyberspace will eventually overtake the human race, the answer is not quite. Because rather than a displacement, what will happen will be a symbiosis. We will gradually merge with artificial forms of intelligence. They already augment our power, our human power, and eventually we'll rely on them as much as any other form of, any other source of knowledge for their decision support. So over time it'll be natural that we use these other forms and they use us. And remember, they all operate in communities on the internet. And again, these theories, the ones we've been discussing in our last 4 programs, are not speculation. They are based on projects and programs that are currently either operational or in prototype form, or at least a long way down the research track. The only thing that's not quite clear will be the time frame. How long will it take for this merging of artificial life and biological life, artificial reality and biological reality? My guess is somewhere around 30, 40 years. But only time will tell. I'm David Tower, and you've been watching the Theories of Everything program on Channel 31 Community Television. I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.